What happens when a guy from the city accidentally contacts a guy from the country? It's not what you think. They strike up a conversation and same difference is created. JD and Kory talk the whole gamut of life as they each see it through the prism of race. One is a 6'4" black man and one is a 5'4" white man. Tune in and find out which is which. Agree or disagree, they will make you think, strike emotional chords, and more. Stick around. You might just learn something. Welcome to Same Difference with your hosts, JD and Kory. We're sharing our stories and how our stories impacted our approach to life. We take our perspectives into having dialogue about real life topics. Welcome back, faithful listeners. Welcome back to Same Difference Podcast. I am Kory May, and here is my tag team partner, the good doctor, JD Mass. Doctor.
Thank you, Kory. How are you today?
Oh, much better than I was the last time we spoke. I had a bout of bronchitis that was intense, let's just say. If you can't breathe well, you can't do a whole lot of things.
Yeah, I understand. I'm not relating on the bronchitis, although I had a bout of it about a year ago. But I definitely woke up with something different today, and that is, signs of vertigo. So I am doing my best to stay upright during this, but we'll at least have some good clips to make fun of if I fall over. So let's get the party on. First, we want to thank and always appreciate the people at VPR Radio for what they've done to help us get going. Kiana the Goddess and DJ FMI, we thank you. And we look forward to much success with you and for you.
Thank you for that. We also want to thank all of our listeners who are out there putting in the work and taking time out of their busy schedules to include us in their lives. Yes. So if you are out there doing that daily grind and you find a little bit of relief and respite from all that through our humble podcast, thank you very much. You are getting to know JD and me at the same time that we're getting to know each other. And for that, I'm beyond happy that you are again including us in your lives. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask us questions. Don't be afraid to leave feedback so that we can know what to do so that we can improve. Or if there are places that we need to clarify that is that which is unclear, let us know so that we can do that. The last time you heard from me was the eulogy and the commentary on my friend Dave. And I have to thank JD for being such a wonderful co-host, asking questions and just providing a safe spot to land with all the feelings of loss and grief and how we talked about how men grieve. This is unfamiliar territory for a lot of us. And it may seem uncomfortable, but again, JD and I had the chance to talk and listen. So for that, I'm thankful. There is an episode in between this one and that one. You'll hear that on Tuesday, but again,
they would have heard it by the time they heard this one.
Yeah. I see. There you go. I don't know what I'd do without you.
It's the medicine.
Thank God I'm pretty, because I wouldn't last a second in the wild. Before there was the conversation about Dave, I believe we were discussing graduating from college, and I can bring up some stories about that. So for me, the big dilemma was where to go after school, after I've graduated from college. Where do I go? Chicago, I don't really have a big interest in Chicago. St. Louis, it was close, but I don't know anybody. I don't have a support network. If I stay in town, what's the reason for that? I don't know anybody out west, and I'm not particularly adventuresome there. Washington, D.C. D.C. Not New York, not Philly, D.C. I have no desire to go into the South. So D.C. happens to be it. Now I have family out here, I have cousins. My eldest sister lived out here for years, so there's always been one of us since the 70s. There's one of us in the DC metropolitan area. And so I go.
Did your love for politics have anything to do with
Oh, of
that?
course it did. But you can do politics almost anywhere.
For sure.
But national politics, there's something to be said about that. Oh, yeah. There's a lot that can be said about that. But DC also felt like home because I'd summered there, if you will. If I want to sound bougie, I summered in DC. No, I am not that. I am not that bougie. But the joy of it was,
Not if you're summering in DC, sorry. You missed swung on the bouginess. If that was your landing spot for summering, go ahead.
but for me, it was just always. This was growing up in Iowa. Iowa is my home, but DC felt like a cultural home, and felt this affinity on so many levels. Like here I am walking around where history was made. The dirt on my shoes, hypothetically, or not hypothetically, metaphorically, is the same dirt that power brokers had. Now, at the same time, you could see all of the segregation, you could see the wealth concentrations, the disparities between the rich and the poor very easily. But it was also a place where, again, whereas I stood out in Iowa City because of my blackness, DC was a place where I blend in precisely because of my blackness. At that time, DC was called Chocolate City. And it felt so good to be able to just be anonymous. Where being a 6'4" black man was just, you're another dude on the street, just another dude on the street. And Howard University is not far from where I first live. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Howard, shame on you. But Howard, especially given that VP Harris attended there, it's a historically black college and university, Howard University off Georgia Avenue. It is, and DC is one of the most, there's so many schools in the city itself. So you've got Howard and University of DC. You've got Catholic University. You've got Gallaudet University, which is a deaf and hearing impaired school. You've got Georgetown as well. And none of these schools, well, UDC is a little sketchy, but all those schools are pretty much powerhouses. Oh, I forgot George Washington University right there. If you go half an hour outside, probably less than that, you've got the University of Maryland there as well. There's any number of community colleges dotting around there. If you go into Virginia, which isn't, again, that far away, there's, not James Madison, not George Mason. Well, there's a George Mason branch not that far outside of DC as well. But you can see that there is a thriving educational community. And as one of those criterias for quality of life for me, it was, I never want to live in a town that doesn't have a college or a university. And here there are so many. Plus, you've got the Smithsonian Institution right there. And all of these cultural events are available. There's theater, there's athletics, there's so many things going on. This just feels like the right place to be. I don't have a car. And because I don't have a car, what does that mean? I've got to rely on public transit. And at the time, DC's metro public transit was some of the best, I would think, in the world. You could get almost anywhere between bus ride and a metro ride.
Yeah.
And again, for me, this was an example of how government works and people are able to see their tax dollars at work every single day in such a way that it almost becomes invisible, because that's what happens. The You have multiple jurisdictions of police and law enforcement there. You have multiple jurisdictions of um, government agencies. The planes that fly in and out of Dulles Airport as well as National are governed by, I mean, that transit is governed by the feds. You've got the Pentagon. You can see it. All this stuff is happening around you, and you see your tax dollars at work.
So,
Makes Go ahead.
is this the perspective you have at this age? Like, are you looking at it, thinking about it this way because
No, this is me now
now? Okay.
imposing some of it, but there's also this great wonder of this fantastic city, because I'm looking at it from the perspective of, I've studied politics, I've studied Washington. This just feels so amazing. And in the 80s, Ronald Reagan referred to the United States as the shining city on the hill. And it's a biblical metaphor reference.
Trump's selling Bibles now, so we're in
Oh,
the same.
good Lord. Help me, Lord.
Sorry. I,
Help me, Lord.
I
Um,
Happy Easter, everybody.
so we've got this beautiful city of promise. And there's some wide-eyed kid from flyover country going to the big city, and I'm fascinated by it. And looking back, and right now I'm kind of imposed all of this, what I hope Washington is and what I've always hoped Washington to be, onto it. So there's a little bit of mix of it. When I get there, I become more realistic, because I'm seeing homeless people up close for the first time. Um, and when the closer you get, you see where uh, there are failures in the system. Homelessness, hunger, um, people evacuating their bowels in the street, things like that. It's a little bit jarring if you don't have a sense of it. Um, the smells of the city in the morning the smell of the city in the morning is different than it is when the restaurants open and you start to smell the ingredients and things getting cooked. There's the city, so the city smell changes over the course of the day, and when everything shuts down, there's this kind of peace that settles in and things cool off for a moment or two, and then the unsavory scents start to rise up, and then they get suppressed again over the course of the day. For me, it was always putting on the don't mess with me face. Yeah, I don't want to be bothered with face. You learn how to mask by, I mean, you dress yourself every day, you know what you're going to wear, but you also have to put on the stony face of apathy, or the I will rip your throat out face on as you are walking, so people just leave you alone. Not that I ever encountered that, and not that I was ever threatened in any of those circumstances. No, not at all. But it's a face you acquire so that people just want to leave you alone. In Iowa City, everybody walks around with a smile, and we say hi to each other, hey, or try to catch each other's eyes, nod, whatever. Out there, I wasn't doing any of that. And my Iowa nice would sometimes be interpreted as uh, creepiness, or like I was trying to get over on somebody, or hitting on a woman. If I'm saying, hey, you may have my seat, you just sometimes get up and offer the seat without saying anything, or you may have my seat.
Got to put that bass in your voice.
Yeah, yeah, you sure do. Sensitivity.
I can relate. Like when I first moved out to LA, I was like, damn, nobody speaks when you walk down the street to each other. Whereas in St. Louis, I don't, even though we have definitely our quarrels about, racism and segregation and whatnot, like you at least waved to you, you spoke, you did all that. It was very different going out to the bigger cities and just seeing like, oh no, they looked at you like, what the hell? I just said hi.
Right, right, right. You say hello to somebody. Hello. People.
Right, exactly. What's wrong? What is wrong with you?
Yeah, reaching for their strap and stuff. You're like,
Yeah,
no, 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 no. I
yeah,
was just saying
just
hello. That's all.
just greeting. It's something we do on
Mm.
Earth. I know this is concrete jungle, but I know on Earth we say hello.
That was it was picking and choosing your spots. Also, like when I first moved out, I moved out into a group home. It was a townhome, and you have to understand. So DC is laid out on a grid system. There's four quadrants: northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast. Northwest has most of the resources. It was a bigger quadrant, and this isn't a perfect diamond shape. Southwest is kind of is smaller because that goes into the border of the river and Virginia. But you have it's a blue collar kind of area. Southeast, southwest. Southeast is cool, but the further you get away from the capital at that time was the further away you got from the capital, higher the crime appeared to be, and that's where a lot of police resources were invested to keep it there, and much less so in northeast, northwest, and southwest. Southwest was again where a lot of your money was concentrated, and as a result, it was considered the more desirable area to live in northwest. When you move into northeast or southeast, southwest, the level of service that you got was again dependent on the closer you were to that northwest or that axis, right? The closer you are to that vertical or horizontal axis, the more access that you have to resources. The further away, we're not necessarily investing so much. All the neighborhoods had names, and if you were to go back and look at a classic 1940s, 1950s map, you would have like every couple of blocks, there'd be a new neighborhood, and everybody who lived in that neighborhood would identify in that neighborhood. And that was all identification.
Yeah.
The architecture comes in, and there's a lot of row houses. I've always been fascinated by row houses because, again, when done well and when cared for,
Uh-huh. They're beautiful.
they're beautiful. Oh, you got it. You got it. But when they're not cared for, well, you can see how people can say, oh, that's a dangerous area. But
Mhm.
if everybody's in the neighborhood taking care of their patch of grass and painting the face of their house and doing all that upkeep, we're good. I remember one time I was working on the hill and I came home. Everybody's good. I'm walking past these folks on their stoops, and they would say, "Hey, young man," and I'd wave. And I'd see them on the way to work and on the way home from work. and I didn't think they really paid any attention to me. I'd been there probably 4 or 5 months, and I come home a little later than usual. And they say, "Young man," I'm like, "What? What? Everything okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, everything's fine." "Why?" "Well, you're just not home on time. You're a little late. Everything okay?" I was like, I didn't even know that I was accepted as a part of the community, right? But maybe it was the fact that I'm wearing a coat and tie every day. Maybe it's the fact that I carrying myself a little differently, that they had noticed that I'm doing something. I'm doing something right. And that made me feel accepted. A
Welcome.
couple days, go ahead.
Welcome.
Yeah, yeah. A couple days later, I'm coming back, and one of the old school guys was like, "Maybe you want to take a different route home." "Why is that?" He said, "Some knuckleheads are up ahead, and maybe you just want to wait here for a couple minutes and then go on just up the street, 1 block over and 1 block, and then maybe that'll take you outside of what you need, or to get home." And it was in that moment that I again recognized that I was welcomed and that somebody was looking out for me. I'd left Iowa because I didn't want to be seen, and I wanted to be anonymous. I was accepted. I was still somewhat anonymous, but someone was looking out for me in terms of saying, "Hey, son, don't go on down there. There's some bad actors here."
Mm.
That made me feel kind of good. As I look back, there are some real lessons that are learned uh, in that time. I didn't understand what a food desert was, but I didn't back home here. I'm not far from any grocery store,
Right.
right? I'm not far from grocery stores, and there was always access to transit such that I could get what I needed. Now, in the neighborhood that I was, grocery stores weren't, they were more difficult to get to. Yeah, they were a little bit more difficult to get to. You know how I said that if you're in Northwest, the closer you are to, I mean, yeah, when you're in Northwest, you've got more resources there. I still, because I was not in the wealthiest part of Northwest, there was still a bit of a jog to go to pick up groceries. So if I'm loaded up on groceries, 10, 15 bags, there's a couple things that are obvious. One, I got my hands full, which means uh, I can't fight. Now, I'm not going to get mugged or anything like that, but you start to do threat assessments in terms of vulnerability because you have food and people need food.
Yeah.
What is a motivator to rob somebody? Food.
Yeah.
Food is a survival.
Desperation. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
Hunger is a survival instinct.
Yeah.
And people will do great things, both positive and negative, for food. So I had to learn that. I also had to learn that you're not taking 15 bags on the bus, even
Right.
though the bus is gonna pick you up in front of the store and take you up to your apartment, or take you over to your house, and you got to walk 3 blocks with 15 bags. No, you're going to be more judicious, or you're going to find a way that whomever has a car, and a car is a resource, whomever has a car, you're going to go shopping, and you may have to coordinate with 2 or 3 friends in order to use that car.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I had to learn when I fell on hard times after my Nelly days and after the community, was how much more expensive it is to be broke than it is to be wealthier. And it's not just because, like, the banks will loan you at a lower percentage rate and all of this. It is literally how much more time you have to spend getting things done. I can only buy 5 grocery bags while everybody else is buying 15.
Right.
and I have to go back 3 times to so that's time wasted, that's, not wasted, but that's time
No.
spent, that's money, more money to go and come back each time. There is levels to the amount of cost, and so it becomes an exponential cost of being
Hmm.
broke compared to having more money. And so that makes the gap easier to grow as time goes on because exponentially it's growing. And that is something that takes, you know, love to fix.
Oh, absolutely. You hit it on the head. It also limits your entertainment as well. So I'm not broke, but I'm not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. I can live if I make some good choices, I can live pretty comfortably. And again, at that point, I'm making, well, I graduated from college with $2,000 of debt and I pay it off in 10 months, 200 bucks a month, which
Wow.
was at that
That's
time
a
on my
large
wages. What was
that's a
that?
large payment each month too.
Yeah. And
Right.
this is the 90s.
Yeah.
So we're talking 1991, 200 bucks a month was, and I was making under $20,000. But hey, here we go. Bam, bam, bam. I'm paying this off 200 bucks a month. Come hell or high water, that was going out. I wanted to be out from under the idea that I owed anything. So what I'm seeing here in the Washington Post, there's appeals for kids to go to summer camp. Now never been to summer camp, but what I would see is as I'm having these interactions between my small circle and other people's circles is summer camps for a lot of folks were the exposures to things like, oh, hey, I've got an equestrian summer camp. I've got an archery summer camp. There's chess camps. I had when I was in high school, I attended debate camp, which was fantastic. Um, but you get these immersion experiences, and what I found out is that not everybody has those, right? Not everybody is able to go to summer camp for whatever in whatever concentration that they're looking at. And you start to see that wealth allows people opportunities. And we know that. But allows children opportunities to dabble and start to find their way far earlier
Far earlier.
than others.
Right.
So if you have a talent for something and you've been going to dance camp ever since you were 6 or 7 years old, if you're not good, you're going to get weeded out.
Right.
But if you're good, guess what? You got this this talent multiplier, because
You're
you're
being
in,
trained. Yeah.
yes,
You're in
every
it.
year, this is something that we do.
Yeah.
If you don't have that access to wealth, then you need a benefactor who's going to look in and say, oh, you diamond in the rough, I'm going to snatch you up out of here and put you into this place. Now, notwithstanding uh, cultural differences or socioeconomic differences, that being plucked up as a diamond in the rough and put into this new environment, that's difficult and taxing on you to begin with. But if you don't have that benefactor, your prospects become a lot harder. Not to say that it can't be done, it just becomes harder, so much more difficult to chase those dreams.
Yeah.
And this is where that whole trope of pull yourself up by your by your bootstraps becomes so much harder. I It's hard to get up to this level to begin with, right? If you've been going to camp since sixth grade or since you were six, and you've been making it through on that meritocracy, so to speak, your talent keeps proving itself and you're up here. It's virtually impossible to start here, have no access, and suddenly jump up here because there's so many things that you haven't learned. there's so many things that you haven't been exposed to make that jump from here to here as polished and poised, almost impossible. Almost impossible. So I would start to see that. And the horizons are two different ones. If you have wealth, your horizon is this. If you do not have access to resources, your horizon becomes whatever rec programs are available through the city
Mhm.
and possibly through the Boys and Girls Club.
So you're really starting to see this difference now
Oh, yeah.
in your life as opposed to what you had been exposed to in a smaller town such
Oh,
as
yeah.
or city such as Iowa City.
So we had access to the university because where the university and the community are almost, well, they are inextricably linked.
And
Go ahead.
I'm going to segue into my story from this because this is what's happening in Nelly's life.
Go ahead.
Um, I remember, and I believe last time I brought it up that Lorenzo had a master bed. It was a beautifully designed with different levels and openness, a little condominium. Master bedroom was straight down the stairs as you walked in the house, went down, and then the kitchen and the living room were over here, and the kitchen and dining room were over here, and then up on a plateau above the master bedroom was kind of the living room area, and there was two other bedrooms. And I remember sitting in the hall right after Nelly had moved into it, and he was like, "Did you ever imagine that, you know, I'd be having a place like this, coming from this little meager two-bedroom apartment that he spent most of his life with his mom, and then even as an adult, early in his early adulthood, just he was on the couch, his mom was in a one-bedroom apartment." Just being in a three-bedroom condominium in West County was mind-blowing for him at the time. Now imagine, recently he sold his music rights for $50 million and whatnot. So he's had much bigger homes since then. And that probably seems very, something like he would buy his father or whatnot. But that feeling that he had, that access to uh, opportunity that he had, because that is what economics version of money is measuring money as a means of opportunity. He had, this real sense of amazement and pride, and the
Good.
refrigerator was stocked, whereas as a child it was empty, and that was a big difference. And so, I remember really enjoying that for him at that moment and that feeling, right? So now, obviously, doors are opening. And so we'll go back to where we left off with the last episode. And that is Nelly gets to bring one person to the Cardinals baseball game
Yes.
in 2001, maybe it was, or it was 2000 season. No, I think it had to be 2001 season when this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So Pool Host has just come on. We got Jim Edmonds. Can't remember if Scott Rowland was in there, but we got to go down and be a part of there. And I remember them all introducing themselves. Nelly, this is Miss Jim Edmonds. And we were like, dude, we know exactly who you are. Like it's one thing being Nelly, it's another thing being a St. Louis Cardinal and a really good all-star St. Louis Cardinal in the city of St. Louis, right? Like that is the status of St. Louis that Nelly's aspiring to be to still, right?
Right.
And uh I just remember, going through the locker a little bit, standing in the locker room, talking to them, mostly listening. And at one point, they were showing us around, and a scuffle broke out between two players.
Oh,
The catcher at the time, and he might have been even a backup catcher, Eli Moreno, who was kind of this stocky, strong guy, and Edgar Renteria got into a fight. And we didn't see the fight. The fight happened in one of the training rooms, but we saw as we were coming back after the tour, so to speak, and back into the main locker room area, Edgar Renteria walked past us pretty fast, grabbed his bat, and walked towards the back. And you hear this scuffling going on, and they broke it all up. And then he was kind of, they had to separate the two of them and whatnot. And they were like, "Oh no, there's nothing." And we were like, "Oh, we know what happened. Like we know what's going on. We've seen a fight before. No, no fights happen." And so, when you see things like the Draymond Green hitting what's his name, and it got leaked, like that shit happens more often than we're ever told and know about. Um, because nobody would have known. Nobody knows about that fight. It was never in the media. We looked, me and Nelly looked for days to find out if anything ever made its way. Right, that was kept hush.
oh yeah.
Um, and so it was just, yeah, that was a great experience to be in that setting. And then I remember that night we went out. Fernando Vina was the second baseman, and Edgar Renteria and us went out to dinner. It was, Nelly and I and those two. And that was pretty amazing just to be in that circle at that time. And I'm not a starstruck person, so it wasn't, didn't ask anybody for their autograph. I never was into autographs, although I do have an Ozzie Smith autograph jersey that I cherish. But
Yeah.
that's the only one. It's just it was exciting to be there and see them as human beings and experience them. And I remember them talking about Tony La Russa and them going, "Hey, you ever notice Tony's?" And we were like, "Why? What do you mean?" "Well, he's got the nose of an alcoholic." Like, we were like, "What?" Like, yeah, Tony to be dropping them down. And so he's like, you know, they were talking about sometimes he's covert in his management, that he'll like lean up against the the clubhouse, and that'll be a sign. And you're like, I can't see you. I'm on second base. I'm supposed to know what the hell he wants me to do, and I can't see his ass and whatever. So it was just some fun conversations of behind the scenes of a clubhouse that you don't really know about.
Mm. So, what was it like when you went out to dinner? How did that, the dynamics of that? Okay. So, you've got these guys who are professional baseball
Baseball
players.
players in a town that loves their professional baseball players.
And here you guys are two guys on the come up.
Uh-huh.
You have, but these guys have resources. Was there any starstruck were there any starstruck moments when you saw that menu and looking at that and going, oh snap? And then remembering, oh, we can do this.
Yeah, so for me, I was happy to see my friend be able to order off the menu comfortably that my grandparents had ordered off of for so many years.
Right?
Right. So this menu wasn't necessarily new to me, other than we get to flip the bill for it. Um, but the fact that one of my friends could now afford to eat at this place was prideful at the time,
Right.
and kind of wanted to rub it in a little bit to my parents. I mean, to my grandparents, so to speak. Although my grandfather had passed by that point. But yeah, it was that. It was watching everybody's eyes on us, and I'm the only one sitting there that everybody's going, who the hell is he? Everybody else is pretty identifiable, but uh they didn't necessarily, that wasn't Nelly's crowd, so to speak.
Right.
So definitely the Cardinals um, were more known by that crowd. Although I'm sure Nelly was recognized at that point. His album came out in August of 21 of 2020, and we were there early spring of or spring summer of 2021. So he was at the top of the music game at this point, skyrocketed that way. And so that was one of the first times when I felt like, okay, the circle of influence has changed,
Right.
right? I got to see that. And we went on tour. We did some other things, and but you were constantly in motion. He was constantly in motion. I think it took him till about that time in his life, in that career process, about 6 to 8 months, where he figured out he could actually tell the label no. He could actually decide for himself where he wanted to go and what he wanted to do, because up until then it was just like, oh, we need to go here, oh, we need to do this photo shoot, oh, we need to do that, we need to do this. Yeah, that became the the norm, was just being told where to go. And it took a while to feel like, oh no, I get to say no. I don't want to go there. No, I don't want to do that. No, I'm good. And so that was a level of his career that was taking place. For me, for let me just say, for everybody, and this is why I really, as you start to hear these stories with Nelly, and my journey within the Nelly camp, I talked to one other manager that or former manager that I used to work with, that we probably may or may not speak again, but it it is hard to judge how we did as managers, as people working with him, as decisions that he made, and decisions that other sane lunatics made, with regards to our friendships and our business decisions and all of that. We didn't have the luxury of a 500,000 gold selling album, and then the next album being 1 to 2 times platinum, and then the next one being the big one. No, this blew up fast, right? Like, you say overnight success after 10 years of working at it or whatever. The explosion to the top of the world, where anytime I call, I can get a hold of anybody by saying, this is Nelly's business manager, JD Mass. That explosion happened so quickly. There were so many phone calls coming our way, people wanting him for this, wanting him for that. We weren't ready. He wasn't ready. There's no way to get ready, but we didn't even have the gradual success of that. We didn't, right?
Right. Right.
When he was doing these type of numbers, his managers were operating out of their basement, right? They weren't prepared for all of that. And then naturally, coming from places where they didn't have, their first instincts were to buy cars and the jewelry and get the look together and all of these things. Spend it on road trips, on just like things that they'd never been able to experience on their own dime before, like that, to that level and degree, especially not from a legitimate money source, so to speak. Um, and it happened fast. And now you're like constantly being pulled, and you don't know what to do. You don't have any practice. We don't have any training. We don't have any higher ups. And the first people that gave us some real advice was on the merchandise. I got pulled in. I'd been starting a small business with my college buddy Topher and another guy, um, Big Tone, who his Tone's father was the high school baseball coach of Topher and Nelly, and
Hmm.
and he was our gym coach. I mean, he was like a pillar in the community. Tone's uncle owned the premier hood uh shoe store, and they did embroidery there, and Big Tone did embroidery there. And you know before Nelly took off, Vocal clothing was started based on the fact that Big Tone could embroider shirts and
Mhm.
make and screen print and make vocal clothing. And so a friend of Nelly's at the time wanted to start that and wanted to start a company, and he came to Big Tone and started that. And so Vocal was originally going to have the merchandise rights. And then Ali actually came to Topher and I, sat down with us and said, hey, they're in over their head. It was four of the Vocal members, but Big Tone was with us and with them. They weren't really mature enough to handle that. And so there's some things that happened between him and them that were unkosher on their part, in my opinion. But we've kind of merged and formed this merchandise company. I forget what we called it. But anyway, we formed a merchandise company, and I raised money from uncles, parents. Lorenzo actually chipped in 10 grand
Mhm.
each. We sold 10 grand blocks, and I raised, I think, close to 100,000 or 100,000 to start. And when I met with his agent, who was handling his touring, the first tour was to go out with cash money. And we were going to open up for, well, we opened up for cash money. And the agent was trying to say, well, Cash Money has a merchandise company. You could just go with them. So we talked to them, and we could tell right away they were not who we wanted to go with for merchandise. We wanted to do our own. And we were saying, what kind of numbers could you expect? Well, I would say it's about $10 per person that comes, spends on merchandise. Well, that's such an inflated number, but we don't know at the time. This is our, so to speak, expert to go to.
Right.
And we end up ordering merchandise so that we can be prepared at all these shows with $10 per head per venue worth of merchandise. When we spoke to his boss, he said, I don't know why he told you that. It's $1.50 maybe per person. So now we've spent 6
And
to
yeah,
7 times what we
yeah.
should have spent on merchandise, and we set up a website. We're, like, brand new to all this. We get a warehouse. We start to build a 3,000 square foot warehouse. We start to build our own walls. My friend's father, who came in and helped us build the walls, he was an electrician by trade. So he literally, we didn't even have enough money to put the wall, put the drywall on, because we spent so much on the merchandise, that we just had the frame and the wires going through to make sure that we had electrical outlets to plug
Right.
in for our desks and whatnot. So much happening so fast, and we're trying to keep up with it. And we don't know what we're really getting into with the merchandise, to the point where one of the first things was Nelly having to buy us out. His lawyer was pissed that, he signed his rights away to his merchandise, because we didn't know and understand what that meant at the time. It meant, like, so many different levels of so many different things. Lorenzo thought that he was investing in Vocal clothing. He didn't really, like, it was so much happening so fast, and there was this big whirlwind. And in order for Nelly to maximize, he kind of bought it out so that everybody at least got their money back. And then he had all this merchandise, and over time, um, Shondo took over the merchandise sales at the venues and on the tour. And we got rid of that rung of merchandise and really learned the game and got the merchandise up to a much higher level. Merchandise stories are definitely something we're going to talk about in to come, because there is a underworld of merchandise. There is a real business acumen to managing the merchandise in the venues that we learned about. And, kudos to Shondo. He did a fantastic job. And that's another point of, as we go along, where that's one of my biggest regrets, is not taking care of him properly. So all of this is to come in future episodes. But yeah, we it's starting to get real, and it got real so fast. It was such a whirlwind, Kory. I can't even tell you. There's even looking back, yes, I have plenty of regrets, but I don't have regrets that I made such terrible decisions, having had to, like, without being in the context of like everything happening so fast
Right.
and whatnot. So
Man, it looks like we're at the top of the hour again, my friend.
yes.
This has been an eye-opening episode, and I'm looking forward to the next one to find
Yeah.
out what's going to happen with JD and Nelly.
And we got to hear about Kory. What's going on with Kory as he's becoming a young adult in DC, Chocolate City.
Yes, indeed. To our thankful, I am thankful to our listeners. You all have made this wonderful, and you have made these conversations worth it. When we started off, we had no idea what was going to happen, but every time we do an episode, we get feedback and someone asks us another question that makes us say, hey, we've got more to talk about. So again, to Kiana and DJ FMI, thank you. To all of our listeners, thank you. You can get in touch with us through the website at samedifference.life.
Yes.
Drop us an email. From there, you can use it at the Same Difference broadcast at gmail.com email address. And I'm going to let JD close out the show this time.
Thank you for coming out. God bless you and good night. Do you know what that's from?
No.
Oh my God, Def Comedy Jams, Russell Simmons. Every time he would close out the show, Martin would be like, you got to speak to them. And he would just close out the show. Thank you for coming out. God bless you and good night. Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of Same Difference. We hope this journey through unique connections and diverse perspectives has left you with fresh insights and a broader understanding of the world we share.
We're humbled by your support and enthusiasm for the incredible stories and discussions we've shared. And remember, our mission is to foster critical thinking, embrace new perspectives, and spark conversations that bring us closer to an equitable world.
So, if you've enjoyed our podcast, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us. Your feedback means the world to us, and it helps us reach even more listeners.
And if you have a story to share or a topic you'd like us to explore, don't hesitate to get in touch. We're always looking for new voices and fresh perspectives to feature on Same Difference.
Until next time, remember that our shared humanity is our most powerful asset, and by working together, we can bring about positive change.
Stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep making a difference. Thank you for being a part of Same Difference.
Take care, everyone. See you in the next episode.